This is Adam Taxin on the morning of Wednesday, September 12th, 2012. I did an audio segment about 2 weeks ago, I guess it was 2.5 weeks ago now, with Marion Taxin, who is my mother and who was also the elected delegate to the Republican convention from Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. She was in a unique position there, but what's interesting is that audio segment was extremely well received, and I'm not just saying that because Marion Taxin is my mother. People really like the way she articulated the issues. I guess it has something to do with the fact also she's in some very interesting segments in this election. She's a little older than the general population. She's a woman, she's Jewish, and she's in the swing state of Pennsylvania. And she joins me now to talk about the pretty big international developments, not really so good, over the last 24, 48 hours. Mom, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for calling, Adam.
Well, the latest news is that the ambassador and I think 3 other people were killed in Libya, I guess very early this morning. What's your take on what all these developments are saying about America's role in the world, America's place in the world?
Well, I think I'd like to react first to the events that occurred yesterday, which were deeply distressing to me. For one, I was very, very upset initially by the apparent shunning of Netanyahu, who was going to be in the United States next week at the United Nations, and who had requested a meeting with President Obama. What was reported was that the president had rejected that meeting, despite Netanyahu's offer to meet with him either in New York or in Washington, D.C. Again, what is extraordinarily troubling is the Iranian nuclear program, which, despite what the president tells us are sanctions that are being placed upon Iran, Iran's program has not been deterred. In fact, it's been accelerated. And every week, every day, they get closer and closer to being able not only to have the capability to create a bomb, a nuclear bomb, but actually get closer to actually creating one, manufacturing one. The uranium continues to be enriched, and the ability for Iran to achieve their objective of building a nuclear missile, it becomes closer to being achieved and accomplished, which of course poses a huge, huge threat to Israel. So, again, the reason I begin with that is that yesterday the president refused to, or stated that he would not meet with Netanyahu. And the answer from the administration given by Carney was that, there are other people, high-level people who can meet, Hillary Clinton can meet, but the problem is that what needs to happen is for Netanyahu to make a decision for what Israel needs to do at this time to protect itself, its people, and its future existence. Very much hinges on whether the U.S. is going to be with Israel or not. Netanyahu really was requesting that the president say what would happen, what level Iran has to get to before the United States will act, etc., etc. Having a meeting with a high-level official does not answer that question.
Good point.
The question of whether the United States will act on Israel's behalf and be there as an ally. Words are cheap. Actions are what are needed. And the fact that the president refused to commit or indicate that he would meet with Netanyahu, I found extraordinarily troubling and, again, a way of equivocating whether the United States would really be there as a true ally of Israel.
And of course,
if the need arose. And the need is now, because every day that Iran continues to enrich uranium and go closer and closer to having a weapon is one day less that Israel has to try to protect itself and its people.
Yeah, it's another insult that he announced this right around the same time he announced he was going on David Letterman again, when he was making a whole issue of time.
Well, I think it's the fact that the campaign is more important than being commander-in-chief and protecting America and its greatest ally, Israel. But the reason I mention that is that I think it all comes to the same. It's all about the same thing. When rioters came and scaled the walls of the Egyptian embassy and shredded the flag and ripped down the American flag, that's a violation of American sovereignty. Mm-hmm. Placing a black flag that represents, I guess, one of the radical Islamist groups, whether Al-Qaeda or another, replacing the American flag with such a flag is a violation of American sovereignty. And to have a response from the administration yesterday, before what occurred in Libya, that was one of sympathy for the rioters rather than a condemnation of the act, I think shows extraordinary weakness on the part of this administration.
Well, some would respond, Mom, that it's not necessarily weakness, that he's actually playing for the other team, and I can't totally discount that.
Well, I'm going to express it the way I express it. But the point is, it emboldens the radical Islamists, and it's nothing. If there was no strong, immediate reaction yesterday, then it emboldens those people in Libya to do what occurred, which resulted in the death of our ambassador and 3 other embassy, I believe, workers, 3 other Americans. Yes, today when it's safe, the president comes out and condemns, but not when yesterday there was a violation of our sovereignty. He didn't do that. And maybe it's an extraordinary naivete on his part, but we certainly do not want a president who's in the Oval Office who doesn't have the insight and the understanding of what needs to be done to ensure the safety of America and the safety of our strongest ally. So, I'm very, very concerned about the events of the past 24 hours.
And they may be ongoing. I mean, who knows what's next?
Well, I think now we're beefing up the security. But the message has been sent since the first day of this administration that it's more important to be liked, it's more important to reach out. He doesn't really understand what radical Islam is about.
Well, I wouldn't even call it radical Islam. I would call it Islam, but that's my opinion.
Well, I wouldn't. I would say the radical Islamists really want... it's really a fight of civilizations, and what they want is not compatible with what Western civilizations want, and there's the conflict, and you certainly do not have a strong hand when you're playing out of a hand of weakness and never reacting to what in an appropriate fashion to what occurs.
Mom, I was thinking. I mean, I can't help but contrast this to the difference from what the difference there would be from what Reagan would have done, and you're old enough to remember Eisenhower, I suppose, too.
Well, and I do remember also, the analogy I would make is the one with Jimmy Carter, when we had the Iranian hostages, and the Iranians refused, for I can't remember the number of days, but many, to release the hostages. And it was only on the afternoon that Reagan was inaugurated and there was a change of leadership that they released the many hostages that had been held.
Okay. And, I just want to emphasize one point. None of the hostages, even though we lost a few Marines or military personnel in the attempted rescue, none of the hostages in Iran were even killed. We lost 4 people. I mean, that's 4 people more than in the whole Iranian hostage crisis. I just want to make that point real quick. But let me wrap up with you, Mom, because I have a feeling if this one's anywhere near as well received as your last segment, we'll be talking to you again, that I'll be talking to you again about this in this format before too long. Any final thoughts for people?
Well, only that, I heard a very interesting statistic yesterday, and perhaps that's one of the reasons why the president doesn't get it. From the first day he took office until yesterday, the usual practice in the Oval Office was early in the morning under Bush, 6 days a week, there was a daily security briefing. We've been told that there's still a daily security briefing. However, what people did not know until that statistic was released yesterday is that President Obama has only attended 44% of those vitally important briefings. 44%, less than half. What's even more alarming and concerning is that in the past months, that the percent that he's attended has only been 38%. That's almost 1 out of 3. If you're not there in person, the answer to that is, he gets a sheet of paper on which, there's a summary of the meeting. Well, the point is the president is the one who should be asking the questions, trying to follow up with the security experts in terms of fleshing out exactly what's happening. If he's missing in action, if he's not there, which he has not been for almost, I guess, if you take the whole presidency, 44% of the time. I mean, that is really, really an extraordinary thing. And perhaps it shows his lack of realization of the importance of national security. I mean, to be on the campaign trail for the amount of time that he's been on it, rather than tending to the nation's business, I think results in the kind of sad occurrences that occurred yesterday, both in Egypt and in Libya. And my greatest concern is what will be the fate of Israel if America is perceived to be an observer.
A couple thoughts. I'd say not just the fate of Israel, the fate of America. I also would say I wouldn't necessarily call the event sad. I would say the appropriate reaction is infuriating. And the other thing I just wanted to point out.
Too, I would agree. I'm trying to be.
You don't have to, Mom. I know my audience here. And then the third thing I wanted to just point out is he's been skipping the national security briefings. Remember, John McCain, who was merely a senator, was not my favorite candidate, but he suspended his campaign to deal with the financial crisis in whatever role he was participating in it. So I just wanted to make that final point. Anyhow, we got to.
And my final point is just that at the convention, the Republican convention, Condoleezza Rice spoke passionately just about, exactly about the national security lack of concern and inappropriate actions that this president has taken.
Marion Taxin, my mother, and also the elected representative to the Republican convention from Pennsylvania's 1st congressional district, and also the Republican leader of Rose Valley, Pennsylvania. Thank you for your time today. I have a feeling with events going the way that they are, we will be doing another one of these real soon.